Thank you so much for being at our home. I tell a lot of you guys that this is not one of the things that I like to do. There's something about public speaking that always, I build up this anxiety in my belly, and I think about it for days. And then I'm glad it is here. I'm glad to be sharing this story with you and I think being in my home, it was crucial in that answer yes to Taylor and Matt when they say, would you speak at CreativeMornings? If it's at Binamanda, because I think it really says a lot about our conviction and the space. And I was sitting right there right before the beginning, and it was almost a full circle to see, logos of Bolted Bread and of Jewel Coffee and of all of these wonderful community members projected onto the sticks that is so profoundly important to me and to my sister and to mom and dad back in Laos and to all of the friends that helped putting these sticks on. So it was definitely a deja vu almost sitting there and seeing that. And we thought we should introduce the space with really dealing into the space itself. I went to NC State, like Taylor mentioned, studied chemistry and design. I thought I was going to be a doctor. Took the MCAT, applied to medical school, and I remember there was a moment, one of our friends, Justin LeBlanc, on Project Runway, his dad was diagnosed with some really major illness. And we were at Duke's Hospital, and I was there to see his dad, and then I went in there, and the space was so sterile, and there was no music, and the wall was white, and then there was the thinking of medicine and blood. I was like, I don't want to be a doctor. Clearly, if I don't like blood, I should not be a doctor. And there really was a lot of those moments in my life when it was just a lot of discovery. So when they asked me to talk about minimal, I was really, really uncomfortable because I think minimalism, it itself has it's a relative term. It is minimal in relation to. But I think what I'd like to focus the next 20 minutes on is rather not what minimalism is, but how it has been relevant in my life. And I think one of the things that is very important to me is the idea that minimalism is about balance, about mindfulness, that it is not in relation to more or not in relation to less, and it itself has its place, that its process demand different things for different people. We thought about the questions to ask for y'all's tag, and I think daily ritual, it's one of the things that I really, really cherish in my life. And I think that to me, it's very basic. It is just about that rhythm. And when I thought about my own daily ritual, I thought a lot about this photograph that's, we actually had this collection of photography long before we opened the restaurant. We were in Laos, walking in the night market, and saw this collection, and it reminded me of a story that Mom and Dad used to tell us when we were growing up. Mom said, so one day the Buddha was walking around town, and there was an old man that came up to him, and the old man says, so what do you and your monks do at the temple that make you a Buddhist? And he said, we eat, we sleep, and we walk. And the old man was so confused. It's like, how is that different from myself? And the Buddha said, when we eat, we know that we are eating. And when we sleep, we know that we are sleeping. And when we walk, we know that we are walking. And that mindfulness, that ability to be just enough in the present moment is, I think, exactly what minimalism is. It's about intentionality. So, you know, here I was thinking, okay, so how am I going to talk about minimalism when my life is so, you know, seemingly complex? And is there a place for minimalism in such a complex and busy life? I left home when I was 12. When visa came the year after, a whole family still living in Laos. I came to Greensboro, and that was the most bizarre experience ever, you know. It was one of those things that I show up, and it took us 6 years before we saw our parents again. So that very intense 6 years still made such a profound impact on my life. But what does it mean to be lonely? What does it mean to be alone? And what does it mean to preserve culture and memories? So food has always been significant in my life, especially in that part. And when Visa was so young, that I knew that the only way to preserve Mom and Dad's memories, and that, you know, that aroma of lemongrass, or when that burnt banana leaf when you bite down the street of Luang Prabang, I knew that the only way for me as a parent to preserve that emotion, that sensation, was to cook for her. So those 6 years in Greensboro has really connected us in a very meaningful level, as the two siblings trying to make it work in this new world. And the complexity, I think, continue because we really were supposed to be here to learn English and go home. And then I got a scholarship to NC State and studied chemistry and design, travel a lot, do the Cowell Fellows program, and just met a lot of fascinating and exciting people. And we were supposed to go home. And then I got another scholarship to Trinity College in Dublin and study international peace and conflict studies. And I think at that time I was so fascinated by the knowledge of information that's out there that I just want to be a student of all of these disciplines. What I didn't realize was, you know, when all of it was done, how do I connect those dots? How do I make that a life that I'm proud of? So I got back from Trinity to Raleigh, and really was to say goodbye to friends and mentors. And it was really right at the peak of the recession. I applied for about 300 jobs and got 0 offers. And it was one of those critical moments that, you know, as a designer, we love parameters. we love challenges and almost see them as, you know, signs and signals. And I think I didn't pay enough attention to signs. You know, I pay a lot of attention to how I process life and opportunities that came about, but I didn't think hard enough about signs. And it was like, there has to be a sign. It really is about why is it that with all these prestigious degree and with all these interests and passion that there wasn't that balance, there wasn't that connection of just enough that it becomes a direction that minimalism is for me. It's just, when you pull two strings, and when the strings is not too tight or too loose, and when just give enough direction. That just wasn't alive for me at that time. So I decided to go back to Laos and spend that summer with mom and dad. Over the past 16 years, I probably spent the total about only 4 months back at home. So going back at home has always been an intense experience. Spending that summer at home really made me realize how much of who I was at the time was still being informed by that first 12 years of my life in Laos, and came back with this affection for this narrative and my own personal background. So we came back to Raleigh, and I met up with Greg Hayden, and he has really been a good mentor in really processing information. I remember before Laos, I pitched this idea to him of opening a restaurant that is about international cuisine, about how do we partner with different refugee groups and have a rotating menu that celebrate those different narratives and stories and memories of people in our own community. But I think what I didn't do that I discovered in Laos was that I have to start with my own story in order to share and tell and be an ambassador of other stories. So Bidamanda become that focus, that this is about not even Laos. This is not even about Laotian food, but this is about a way of life that was meaningful and profound and sacred to Vansana and I, and we want to share that with our community. And I think minimalism is, to me, also is the ability to zoom in, and zoom in close enough so that in all of this, chaotic life and those different nuances and turns, and I think of things like pictures. So when we zoom out in the space, things become patterns and rhythms. But in all of that largeness, if we zoom in close enough, there is something so specific to you and to you alone. And when you can get to that place that is so you, that when you know that you're breathing, that you know that you're eating, and you know that you're living, and you're eating and serving and connecting, the moment that it becomes so profoundly specific that it gives permission for everyone else to come in. And I think that's what minimalism is too. It is not just about direction for you, but when you get to that point when it's just enough, it automatically becomes out. So zooming in to come out. And we feel that every day at Bidamanda. I think the restaurant industry can be, working at a restaurant has always been a way for when Visa and I survived in the States. We were dishwashing, we were hostessing, doing cashier, and this industry can be very violent. It is about supply and demand. It is about timing. It is about, I think it is still the one place that we give permission to ourselves to be higher than someone else, to be distant from our server, that is also our neighbor. And Bidamanda, it has become our intention of how do we create a culture that is about people. Last night, Whitney and I and a couple of staff spent some time in the space and really just thinking about what minimalism is as in terms of us as a culture at Bidamanda. So imagine a Saturday night. We have 250 reservations that we must serve and feed, and everyone must be happy, and the food must be at the right temperature at the right time over 4 hours period. And then we have the back of the house that, the AC is not working well, and it's 78 degrees, and the ice is melting so fast that we have to send our support staff to the station, and someone cut themselves, and sometimes water. We had our busiest night ever a few months ago, and we had no water. There's just no water, right? There's just no water. Like somehow there's just no water in downtown Raleigh, and we have 300 people to serve, and we can't just tell them to leave because there's no water. But it's downtown Raleigh. We should have water somewhere. So there is so many moving parts in the service industry. It's a performance. Every night is a performance, and it's a dance. And how do we dance with it in a way that we respond to its rhythm? And be so still that you can face them and embrace them, that it is a dance. Even with all those challenges, it is still a dance. And I remember Tim. Tim just left us about a month ago. Tim Yarborough. He has been with us since the very beginning. He's a yoga teacher. He cut trees. He does a lot of landscaping. And Tim is a 6 feet tall, just beautiful human creature that chose to be a server because he wants to be a part of this experience. And Tim doesn't get frustrated. He just remain calm, and he just left us to become to study PA. I think he will be a phenomenal someone in the healthcare industry. Period. So we had a night with him, talking and learning from him. What is it that ground him so that he's able to be so alive, even at those moments when it's so easy to not be alive and just be mundane, be mechanic, and just be dream walking, and just responding and not proactive, not coming to a table and present and centered. And he said that when he come to a table with all these moving things that's happening, he come to a table and he imagined his feet still touching earth. And that to me is minimalism. It's just knowing what is just enough to keep you going, and create a space internally for you to get into that room so that you can live a complex life, a busy life, a simple life. That minimalism is not a relative term, that it doesn't mean simple, it doesn't mean less than, it doesn't mean more than. It can be complicated, it can be busyness. It's just about that stillness and the ability to get into that place. And I just want to end the seemingly random talk that I just went through with this painting. I discovered this painting in Beijing, and this old gentleman spent his whole life painting lotus. And because lotus is so sacred in his heart, and I think in the Chinese tradition in general. So we spent an afternoon talking about his intent of wanting to paint lotus. And lotus too is very sacred in our Buddhist tradition, because it is a symbol of enlightenment, that the Buddha, if you see all of the statues, the Buddha is meditating on a lotus. And the stem of that is that, so lotus just thrive in a pond that is dirty. There's a lot of trash, and imagine food getting thrown into the pond and rivers, and the darker the water, lotus just thrive. It doesn't like clean waters. And lotus plant begin at the very bottom of the pond. And slowly it makes its way through this dark tunnel and dark space, and then encounter light and make its way upward and blossom. And with all of these changes that's happening during that process, the stem is so centered. If you cut the lotus stem across, there's nothing but space. And I think that space is what minimalism is. Thank you. Yes, ma'am?
How long did it take to put together all of that?
So we had about 50 to 75 of our closest friends helping, and it took us about 750 hours. We had a very small budget. I think my bank account might have been either like $200 or negative at some point of that office. So the beginning of the restaurant became, so we came back from Laos with this idea of opening this Laotian restaurant, and a lot of folks like, what's Laotian, you know? So that was either the reaction or you have the other direction was like, that's so cool, let's do it. So everything from the graphic design process and the construction to the construction of the space really was a community grassroots efforts of people say, we would love to be a part of this process and let us be a part of it. And I think the sticks are really, is a good symbolic item for that space. I did give my friends a lot of Miller Lite. And I think you see that. So Miller Lite, a lot of friends, you have a Laotian restaurant in Raleigh. Anyone else?
Can you talk about how you chose this place in particular as the place of that restaurant?
Yeah, that process was actually a very interesting, an interesting one. I'm so glad that Craig McDuffie is here because we spent a lot of time walking around downtown Raleigh and imagining spaces. And there are definitely pros and cons to being on Blunt Street, Moore Square. So this space has always been an iconic space in a sense that the Duck and Dumpling was here. And long before downtown was a vibrant, trendy destination, there really were 4 or 5 people who invest their lives in these spaces and trusting that it was an important project. So that was one of the reasons that we want to tap into a place that has a history to it. The biggest negative at that time really was the fact that we are right across from Moore Square. Thinking about homelessness, think about the bus station, think about where we are in relation to our neighbors. I think our experience is quite contrasting to, or at least seemingly contrasting to what's around us. So there was a lot of mentors said this is not a good idea, and this space, has been turning 3-4 times, and every time a restaurant come in here, 3-4 months later it's closed, 3-4 months later it's closed. And I remember having a conversation with Craig that, there will not be a perfect space, but you have to really understand the parameters of those spaces and identify what it is that is so essential to you that you must have, and the nuances become something that you can develop around. And what was essential for us at that time was having a space that has an Asian kitchen, a space that is meaningful to the community. The parameters is how do we embrace the fact that we are in Moore Square? And if we are going to commit to this space, how do we make being in Moore Square a thing that is not positive, but a thing that we understand and a part of? So we have been, really vocal about its development and how do we do it with grace and communication and transparency. We closed down New Year's Eve, which is the most profitable day of the year for restaurants. We closed down that night and do fundraising for folks that dedicate their lives to adult addictions and homelessness. Last year we partnered with support circles. The year before that we partnered with the Healing Place, and we raised almost $35,000 that night alone for support circles. And it really was, I think I'm so glad that there's a lot of energy revolved around east of Raleigh and east of downtown Raleigh, and we are so glad that we were in it before it become the new thing. And I think we have, it is our conviction to focus in Moore Square and be a part of that conversation so that it's not black and white. I think it has I remember when we have the major conversation about feeding, and I remember going to the city hall, hearing the different perspective and how black and white they were. And I think food and culture and what we do here could enhance or at least alter that language a little bit, that it's not this hard surface. So.
Can you talk more about your daily rituals and sort of how they differ from being in Raleigh versus back home?
Rituals, yeah, it's very sacred to me in many levels and not religious at all. I actually just got back from Laos. My grandma just passed. She turned 105 in September. And I was sitting at Mitch's with my friends watching an NC State game, and I got a phone call from my brother that she was dying. And she really was the person that raised us growing up. So I spent about 2 weeks, about 10 days in Laos, and ritual over there has a different rhythm. You know, it is. You know, Mom every morning would offer exactly 2 cups of water, 2 candles, always yellow, 3 incense, and flowers to the Buddha statue, and also to the 4 corners of the house. There's also rituals of us chanting and meditating and laughing and telling stories about my grandma's life around the casket for 7 days. There was also a ritual of making sure that the cooking is always around the casket so that she can smell and that perfume would comfort her. And there's also a ritual of so when someone passed, the spirit comes into this, you know, the word really is travel. So that spirit travels into a journey. And that journey starts on a very dark place. We actually don't have a term for dark or evil. So maybe more lightless, just absence of light. And the only way for that energy or spirit to sense any direction, that string again, is by the good doing that family members are doing in the community, continuing after that person passed. And for a family member, the best way of sending her light was to become monks and nuns. So 60 of us became monks for her. And that orange, bright orange color is what spirits see and feel. So just because I feel like, you know, so much of my life, home is so fluid. And every time I go home, it always ground me and at least have a reference point of why is it that's so important for me that I still offer incense and flowers and candles and water here on Blunt Street every day. Why is it important for me to talk to our staff as, you know, talking about feet touching earth as our staff training? Why is it important for us to think about coming to a table center and alive and breathing? So I think our rituals is still pretty alive, but it's very relevant to my life here.
Is there a significance to the after dinner coffee that you offer after your dinners at restaurants?
Yeah, so Laos was a French colonial community. So there's a lot of nuances of, you know, a little bit of French here and there. But I think more than anything else for us here with the prawn chips, with the coffee or digestive in general, it's, I think we see ourselves as your hosts and you're in our home. So even water itself is a sacred thing that we pour you. So I think it's just an offering from us to you.
One last question.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Oh boy. I think that's a hard one. I have a lot of fun doing what I do, and I think if it's not fun, it's not worth doing it. And if it's not hard and fun and intense and emotional, and you're crying and you're laughing, and if it's not that rich in all senses, then it's not worth doing. Yeah. And that is not very minimal. Or maybe it is.
That's what I'm saying. Thank you.